Kit Kats Can Read. Hey guys, it's Katie. Welcome to another video, and in today's video I'm going to be letting you guys know all of my rereads, as in my current list of rereads. Now you probably would have noticed this shelf, as well as this shelf are all completely empty because those were containing all my rereads. Now I was watching a video I did a couple of years ago on this very day actually, where I just had a short pile of books I would like to reread, and I have since then reread a couple of those books on that list. However, I've also gained loads of other books that I would like to reread, purely because I'm either continuing on with the series or I'm rereading them to decide whether I want to keep them, or I just need to readjust my memory, or purely just because I love the book so much that it's been a while since I've read them. So without further ado, I'm going to first of all begin with the standalone books. So the first book that I would like to reread is Can't Look Away by Donna Kuna. I read this like a couple of years ago now. It could have been last year, I don't know. I read it when it first came out, and since then I would just like to give it a reread to then decide if I would like to either keep it or pass it on to somebody else. The same with the next book, and that is Skin Deep by Laura Jarrett. I remember reading this a few years ago. I really did enjoy it, and I think I did a non-spoiler video review on it, so if I did then I'll link it down below in the description so you guys can check out the review. But it is literally quite a deep story and it's really touching, and I really did like it, so I just want to give another reread to decide if I want to actually keep this book or pass it on to someone else. This next book I actually received on my 25th birthday. I got it signed from the author, and this is Me and Mr. J by Rachel McIntyre. I actually really like this story. This is a student and teacher romance, and I just like to give it another reread again because it's been 3 years, over 3 years in fact, since I have read this book. This next book is one of my all-time favourite books, and I just would like to reread it again just because of that fact, and that is I've Got Your Number by Sophie Kinsella. Honestly, this book is so good. It's an amazing chick lit novel, and I totally recommend it, and yeah, I want to give it a reread. This next book I would like to reread is Amy Rogers' Epic Detour by Morgan Matson. I read this a fair few years ago now, so I'd like to give another reread and see what I think about it. I don't think I actually did a review on it, so it'd be good if I could read it this time round and then give it a review for you guys. But yeah, it's a road trippy sort of novel, but I remember kind of really liking it, so I'm hoping that I enjoy it the second time around. This next book that I would like to reread is Easy by Tamara Webber. There's a kind of spin-off book to this, and I would like to reread this so that I can read that book. But this book, I loved it so much. It had a really interesting twist in it, and it's really good, so I would like to give this a reread for that reason. This next book is Simon vs. the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli. I originally had an arc of this with my name on it, saying like Katie versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda, but actually I gave it away, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to sort of keep it, but then I found since the movie, I'm like, yeah, I want to give another reread again. So it's been a while because I read it as an arc when it was released, and now I want to give it another reread again. This next book that I would love to reread is Everything by Nicola Yoon. I read this before it released as an e-arc, and I really enjoyed it so much, and then there was the movie and I really liked the movie, so I would like to reread this again purely because I loved the book. This book has been a while since I've actually read this, and this is Zircon's Mia by AJ Betts. Not a lot of people actually talk about this book. It's got a similar sort of feel to The Fault in Our Stars, and it's, I think it's like by someone Australian, correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to giving this another reread, as I really enjoyed it the first time around. So I reread Anna and the French Kiss by Stephanie Perkins. So next on the list is Lola and the Boy Next Door by Stephanie Perkins. I would like to give this book a reread again. I don't really remember too much about Lola, so it would be good for me to actually give this a reread. but I remember loving it the first time around. This book I absolutely loved the first time around, so I would like to give it a reread again, and then I don't believe I got around to doing a non-spoiler video review on this, and I know that I asked you guys if you wanted one and you said yes, so it would be good if I could refresh my memory and read this book and then do a review on it, but I loved it so much. This next book I would love to reread again because it's one of my favourite books. When I read it I loved it, and this is Don't Touch by Rachel M. Wilson, and I've only read it once, so I'd like to reread it again, but it's really good about this girl that has something, she can't touch people, that's why she has to wear gloves, and it's really interesting and it's different, and I totally recommend it, and I look forward to rereading this. This next book I would just like to reread to see if I like to keep it or pass it on, and that is My Name is Rapunzel by K.C. Hilton. So this is a retelling on Rapunzel. The cover is gorgeous, and I remember sort of liking it at the time, but it's been a few years since I've actually read this book, so I'd like to reread it again. I've got a couple of Casey West books that I would love to reread. The first of which is On the Fence by Casey West, and the second of which is The Distance Between Us. So I reread the Boyfriend one by her, and I really liked rereading it, so I will really love to enjoy reading these ones again. I can't wait, like I love Casey West books so much, and I just love enjoying reading her books. So yeah, and I think this was the first one that I read by Casey West. It's actually one of the first ones that I read, and I really enjoyed it, so I would like to get these two reread at some point. I've then got a couple of Colleen Hoover books I would love to reread, the first of which is Maybe Someday by Colleen Hoover. This was the first book that I actually read by this author, and I loved it so much. And the second book is Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover, which, you know, I think it's getting turned into a movie. I'm not sure if it is actually released now or not, but I haven't seen it and stuff. But yeah, I would like to give these two books a reread. Another standalone reread would be My Life Next Door by Huntley Fitzpatrick. I loved this the first time around reading it, so I would love to reread it again to get all the feels of this book again. Next of all, I've got a standalone book that's by Jennifer L. Armentrout, who's writing as Jaylin, and this is Frigid. It's a new adult standalone, and I really enjoyed it. As you know, Jennifer L. Armentrout's awesome, so I would like to give this another reread soon. Another standalone that I would like to reread is Holding Up the Universe by Jennifer Niven. As you're aware, I reread All the Bright Places this year, so I would like to read her second novel, Holding Up the Universe, pretty soon. I remember loving this one, but not as much as All the Bright Places, but you never know, my perspective might change the second time reading it, but I'm still really looking forward to giving this one a read. Another standalone that I would love to reread is Finding Audrey by Sophie Kinsella. I really enjoyed this. It has really good anxiety rep, for considering I have anxiety, so I can tell you it's got good anxiety rep. And yeah, I really enjoyed this book, so I would like to give it another reread. Another book that I absolutely loved the first time round, and I would just love to read it again, is Every Last Word by Tamara Ironstone. This book was so good. I loved it so much, so I really would love to give this one a reread again. Next of all, I've got Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. This is another book that I just need to reread. First time round I gave it 4 stars, but my perspective might change because at the time I was reading it when it was really hyped, so at the moment I just would like to, at some point when I get around to it, give this a reread and just sort of go into it, ease into it, and just not let anything get in my way. And the last standalone book that I've got on my reread list is The Duff, The Designated Ugly Fat Friend by Cody Keplinger. I love this book so much, and I really love the movie, and so I just would love to give this a reread. Okay, now I'm going to move on to my series rereads, and this is the section where I've got a lot of them. So these are in no particular order. First of all, I have Unremembered and Unforgotten, both by Jessica Brody. I haven't read the third book yet because I don't want it to end, so I would like to finally, I'm ready for it, reread number 1, number 2, and then I can finally read the third book. But I loved these 2 books so much. I rave about them all the time. I'm raving about them now. If you guys haven't read them, then I suggest you do, but I will put my review down below in the description for you to check that out if you'd like to know more about this book. But yeah, I really honestly need to reread these books. Next of all, I have Half-Blood as well as Pure, both by Jennifer L. Armentrout, that are in this series. It's called the Covenant series, and so I can't remember too much, but I know that I'm on the third book, which I do own now, so I need to reread these two in order to carry on with the series, but I love it so much, so I'm looking forward to rereading these two. Next of all, I would like to reread Pushing the Limits by Katie McGarry. This will be like the third time rereading this. I've already read it once and then reread it twice, and now I just would like to give it a reread again, just to sort of refresh my memory so that I can continue on with this sort of, I think it's like a spin-off sort of series, but it is still technically a series. I would then like to reread The Heir by Kiera Cass, which is the first spin-off book from the Selection trilogy, and this is about their daughter, and there is a book that's after this that I still haven't read yet, so I would like to reread this so that I can read that book. So I need to reread Wait For You by Jaylin, aka Jennifer L. Armentrout, and so I can continue on with this spin-off sort of series, and I really am looking forward to rereading this book because it's been a while. I also would like to reread Unearthly by Cynthia Hand because I have this sequel which I think is called Hallowed, so I need to reread this to refresh my memory on this book so that I can read that one. The same with After by Anna Todd. This is the first book that's in this series. I loved this book so much, and I do have books in the series, so I need to reread this. It's one chunky book, but I loved it so much the first time, and then I can finally read the other books that are in this series. This next book is On the Edge by Alison Van Dopen. This is an ARC copy, but I actually originally read this on the Kindle, but I won this ARC, so which is really good because I loved this book so much, but I know since then there is a sequel to this, so I would like to reread this so I can read the sequel. I would next of all like to reread Mockingjay by Suzanne Collins because I have reread the other two, so I would like to reread this book because this is the one where most stuff happens, so I just have real urge to reread the third and final book. So I'm going to be rereading all of the books that are in the Dolphin Diaries series. This one is just representing the whole series in general. There's like 8 or probably 10 in total, because they contain like special editions, but they're really short, and I read them as a kid, so I'm going to reread them. And this is also going to represent the Animal Arc series as well, because I read loads of those. I can't remember what number I got to in those, so I'm going to be slowly rereading those Animal Arc books for nostalgic reasons, of course. So this is representing Dolphin Diaries as well as the Animal Arc series by Lucy Daniels. I then would like to reread If I Stay by Gail Forman because there is a sequel to this one, and I have seen the movie of this only once, so I would like to give this a reread to just see if my thoughts have changed on this book, because I think the first time reading it I gave it 4 stars, so it'll be interesting to see if my thoughts have changed. Next of all, I'd like to reread What's Left of Me by Kat Sang, and I read this book near enough when I first started BookTube, so that's a long time ago, and so since then there has been a sequel which I do own, and so I would like to reread this to then read that sequel, and I believe it's just a duology, I'm not entirely sure, it could have been extended for all as I know, but I really liked this book a lot. Another book that I would like to reread is Glow by Amy Kathleen Ryan. This has got a sequel as well, I think it's called Spark, something like that, and I read this near enough the beginning of my BookTube journey, so I need to get this reread because I don't remember anything at all. Another series that I would like to reread is The Edge of Never by J.A. Romersky. There's also the sequel which is The Edge of Always, but I don't own the copy of, but if I reread this and love it just as much as I did the first time, I will purchase the second book and keep that because I loved them. This book is so good, I loved it, but it's been years since I've read this book, and I've actually only read it once, so I need to reread this one again. Another couple of books that I would love to reread because I've got the third book. This is The Gathering and The Calling, both by Kelly Armstrong. This book is so good, like so good, and I really like it. I think it's like about shape shifting into like a beast, sort of like a wolf or something. So yeah, I really want to reread these books so that I can read the third book. So this would, with this book, be like the third time rereading, well, second time reread, but third time reading. This is Star-Crossed by Josephine Angelini. So there are other books that are in this series, but I have read this book several times because I love it. It's about like gods and destiny and star-crossed lovers. Yeah, I really love this book so much, and I haven't read it in ages, so I need to reread this pretty soon. So this is a really high reread of mine because I really would like to read and continue on with the series and then read the spin-off series, and I would love to reread Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo, which is the first book that's in this trilogy, and the first time reading it I think I gave it 4 stars, so I would just purely like to reread it just to see if I think any differently, and yeah, hopefully I enjoy it the second time around. So these next couple of books were on my rereads list a couple of years ago, so I still haven't got around to rereading these. And this is Anti-Goddess by Kendare Blake, which is the first book that's in this series, and Earthbound by Abraham Pike, which is the first book that's in this series. So I just would like to reread these and to just sort of, because I don't remember anything about these books, I just want to like create my own little interpretation of it and then decide if I would like to continue on with the series, and hopefully I do, because I do actually have the sequels of these. I next would like to reread P.S. I Still Love You by Jenny Han. I have recently read To All the Boys I've Loved Before because of the Netflix show, and this is the next one I need to reread because originally it was a duology and I read it as a duology, and then I've got the third book, which for some reason I haven't got around to. I just seem to have this third book syndrome in trilogies where I just don't read them. So I need to reread this and then I can finally finish the trilogy. Also from that video I still have Under the Never Sky by Veronica Rossi that I need to reread so I can continue and complete that trilogy. I also have Shipwrecked by Siobhan Curham. I love this book so much, and since then it's got a sequel, so I'd love to reread this book and then read the sequel. I then would like to reread Angel by L.A. Weatherly so that I can read the sequel of this one. I've also got The Fifth Wave as well as The Infinite Sea by Rick Yancey to reread so that I can read the third and final book and see if I think differently about these books, because when I went into this book I wasn't too keen on it, and this one same, so I would hopefully enjoy them the second time around. Next of all, I'd like to reread Sweet Evil and Sweet Peril, both by Wendy Higgins. I don't remember what's happened in these books, but I need to read the third book, so I need to reread these first before I can read that third book. I would next like to reread Shiver by Meg Stiefvater. I haven't read this book in years, and yet I contain the whole trilogy as well as the spin-off book, like the fourth book, and so I would like to reread this because it's been so long and I might think differently about it. I know it was really slow to get into, but apparently all of her books are kind of like that, so I would just like to give it another reread and see what I think. So I first read this book around the time when it was really hyped and when the movie was out, and I stupidly watched the movie first before reading the book, and that is Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan, and so I just need to reread this because I contain the whole series as well as the other spin-off series, and so I'd like to reread this to see if I enjoy it the second time around. So unfortunately the battery on my camera died and I need to film the rest of this video before I have to go and leave for work, so it's got to be done. So I'm sorry that the quality is gonna dip, but I am next on these couple of books, which is The Immortal Rules and The Eternity Cure. So I loved these books the first time around. It's been so long since I've read them, so I would love to give these two books a reread to finally then read the third and final book that is in this trilogy. These next couple of books are high on my priority of rereads. This first one is Wicked by Jennifer Armentrout. This is the first book that's in this trilogy, and it's a new adult paranormal trilogy, and the second of which is Legend by Marie Lu. I just would like to reread these books because I need to continue on with the series. I've then got The Murder Complex by Lindsay Cummings, which I would like to reread so that I can read the second book that's in this duology, and I read this the first time as an ebook, so now that I've got this as a finished copy I would just love to reread. Plus I've now got it signed since then. So I would love to reread it because I loved it the first time around. These next couple of books are part of a series. This is In Your Dreams and As You Wake, both by Amy Martin. She's a self-published author, but these books are freaking amazing. And it's all about narcolepsy, and I really enjoyed it the first time around, so I'd like to give it a reread again because there is a third book that's in this series. Next of all, I've got Cinder as well as Scarlet to reread so that I can then continue on with this series and read Cress. Fire and Flood by Victoria Scott so I can read the sequel, as well as White Hot Kiss by Jennifer Armentrout so I can read the sequel and continue on with this series. I would then also like to reread Unravelling by Elizabeth Norris, and I have read this once and then listened to it on audiobook the second time. I would like to reread this for another time so that I can then read the sequel to this one. This is another series that I would like to reread, and that is Shatter Me, as well as Unravel Me, as well as Unite Me, all by Tahira Murphy. There is a third book, as well as a new book, Restore Me, which I have yet to get until I have read all of these. So I need to reread these, but I loved them the first time around, though they're all freaking amazing. Another book that I would like to reread is The 100 Day 21 by Cass Morgan, and probably the first book actually, so I might reread the first book as well because I really liked the first book. So I loved the TV show and I would like to reread the books. I would also like to reread Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard because I don't remember too much of what happens in this book, and I would like to read and complete this series. So I remember really enjoying it the first time around, so it'd be good to give it another reread. Next of all, I have got Evermore, as well as Blue Moon, as well as Shadowland to all reread. They're in this series. It's the Immortals series by Alison Noel. Loved these books the first time around, so I'd like to reread these so that I can continue and finally finish this series because I've had it for such a long time. Now, this book originally was a standalone, but since then it has been known to be made into a sequel, but we don't know when the sequel, unless you guys know when there's going to be a sequel to this book. That's The Host by Stephanie Meyer. I would love to reread The Host again, and I'm hoping that she does bring out this series because I've been waiting ages. I've been waiting like for ages, and I've had this book for so long as well, so I just really want to reread this anyway because I loved the movie. Like, I love the movie so much, and I really actually enjoyed the book, considering it was quite slow to get into. But I feel like since I've read it, now I will ease into this a lot better. So this is the next book that's in the Mortal Instruments series. I don't know what I had to think then, but this is City of Lost Souls by Cassandra Clare. I would like to reread this because I haven't actually read City of Heavenly Fire because I stopped halfway through when I realised that there's spoilers from the Inferno Devices series. So this will be my last reread of the Mortal Instruments books before I will then read City of Heavenly Fire. But I'm reading it in order of publication now, so I will get around to reading this at some point, definitely. I'm looking forward to rereading it though because I don't remember anything that happened from it. This is another book that I would love to reread so that I can read the sequel. I loved this the first time around, all considering the controversy that was going around this book, but this is Girl Online by Zoe Sugg. I loved it the first time around and I would love to reread it again, and I mean the first time around it made me want to vlog and stuff, and so it's probably going to make me do the same, but I loved it so much, so I'm looking forward to rereading this one at some point. Another book that I would like to reread is Altered by Jennifer Rush. There is a sequel to this which I now own actually, so I need to reread this book so that I can read that book. Next in the Fallen series for me to reread is Torment by Long Kate. This is the second book so that I can read this one, and then finally I just really want to complete the Fallen series. It's been so long, I keep like stopping and then I have to like reread it all over again to just remember, but since then there's been a movie on the first book, so I won't ever have to reread that because the movie pretty much gives the basic gist of the story. So I just would like to continue on with Torment because I don't remember what happens in this book. So I need to reread Picture Perfect by Holly Snell because I don't remember what happens in this book, and if I reread this book then I can continue on with the Geek Girl series because I can remember like the first and the second book, but like this one is the one where I'm just sort of like a bit iffy on. So I mean, I love it and I would love to reread it again, so I'm looking forward to giving it a reread at some point. Next of all is These Broken Stars by Amy Kaufman and Megan Spooner. This is the first book that's in this, I think it's a trilogy, and I've got the sequel to this one and I really actually enjoyed it. It is definitely kind of like Titanic in space, but I don't really remember anything that really goes on in this book, so that's why I need to reread it so that I can re-enjoy it again, and then I can dive into the second and the third book. So next of all, I would like to reread Hush Hush by Becca Fitzpatrick, which is the first book that is in this series. I have reread this several times now and I love it so much. Like, it gets me really addicted into Fallen Angel books again, and this one I love so much. So I would just like to reread this one so that I can reread the second book, and then I again need to finally finish this series. This was also another book that was on my rereads list a couple of years ago, and that is Tempest by Julie Cross. I need to reread this book. It is a time travel-y sort of novel and I really enjoyed it the first time around, but I would like to reread this so that I can finally read the sequel. Next of all, I have The Darkest Minds by Alexandra Bracken. I would like to reread this, one because of the movie being out, and two because I don't remember too much from this book, if I'm honest. This would be the third time reading this book, the next time I get around to reading it, and I enjoyed it the second time more than the first time. I gave it 4 stars the first time, 5 stars the second time, so who knows what I'm going to give it this time, but I need to continue on with this series, especially now that I've got the latest book that's in the series to read, so I need to reread this, and yeah, I'm definitely in the mood for it actually, so it's probably one of those high priority rereads of mine. Wake by Amanda Hockin is the first book that is in this Mermaid series. I loved it the first time around, so I'm looking forward to giving it a read again so that I can then complete this series. Flawed by Cecilia Ahern. Since then a sequel has come out, so I would like to reread it so it's fresh in my mind so that I can then read the sequel. Again, this book was also on that rereads list a couple of years ago, and that is The Archive by Victoria Schwab. I haven't read this in a few years. I would like to give this a reread, and hopefully I've got more of a clearer head because I found it really hard to get into the first time, so I'm hoping I can get into it because I do now have the sequel to this duology. Not a Drop to Drink by Mindy McGuinness. I loved this book the first time around. I need to reread it. There is a sequel now to this book, so I would love to reread this again. This is just basically about survival, especially when there's not a lot of water, so I definitely recommend it. It's really good. This book was also on that rereads list a couple of years ago, and that is Fated by Alison Noel. I still haven't got around to reading this. I need to reread it because I would love to read The Soul Seekers. I know I wasn't too keen on this book, but I don't know if I wasn't in the right mindset for it. It just took me a while to get into, so I'm hoping that the second time around it's going to be a lot easier for me to get into this book. Another reread for me would be Alienated by Melissa Landers. I've got the sequel to this, Invaded I think it's called. I really enjoyed this book the first time around. Again, it's about aliens with humans, so if you like your alien books, there's definitely this. Plus this cover is gorgeous, it looks so gorgeous, and all the way around it's really good, so I'm looking forward to rereading this one at some point. Next of all, I would like to reread this series, which is the House of Night series. I'm currently on Untamed, which is the 4th book that's in this series, so I need to reread this one, and I think I need to reread I think there's Tempted and Hunted, and there's loads of books that's in this series, so I would love to finish it. I really enjoy these books though, they're like guilty pleasures of mine, so I'm looking forward to finally giving this book a reread at some point. And then I've got this mighty trilogy that I would like to reread, and that is The Unbecoming of Mara Dyer, as well as The Evolution of Mara Dyer, and then The Retribution of Mara Dyer. So these 3 books, they are huge, and look at them all together, they're massive, but I loved them all. I love them all, and there's 2 reasons why I would like to reread these books. One being that I love them so much and I need to jot my memory on them, then also because there's the spin-off now, which is about Noah Shaw, and I haven't read those books yet, purely because I want to reread these so that it's fresh in my mind, so that when I do read the Noah Shaw books, I'm ready. I'm ready for it. I have 3 books left to share with you of my rereads list. This video is going to be big, but I have a load of books I would like to reread, just purely because I need to refresh my mind, mostly on sequels. So this again is another one, and that is An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. So I first read this as an ARC. I've now got a lovely finished hardcover copy, and it's absolutely gorgeous, and I love it so much. And so I haven't actually read it from this book, but I would like to reread this so that I can then read the sequel. And now is the perfect time of year to actually read books like this, like fantasies. And I really enjoyed this book the first time. It's definitely different, it's definitely interesting, and I really enjoyed it, so I would like to refresh my mind with this book and then go on to the sequel as soon as I'm ready. This would be another one where I need to refresh my memory, and that is Teardrop by Long Kate. I haven't read it from this book because I had a manuscript of this book, but I love it so much I did a review on it, and I basically, I just raved about it so much. I really enjoyed it that they actually sent me a finished copy, and this is the finished copy. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's one of my favourite covers ever. And yeah, I don't remember too much about this. All I know is it's just about this girl that can't cry. And yeah, I just need to reread this because I have got the sequel and I need to give these a reread so that I can read the sequel. The final book that is on this rereads list, you would have seen it as a paperback a couple of years ago if you were watching my channel then, but now since then I've managed to get the hardcover version that matches the sequel to this, and that is Across the Universe by Beth Revis. So I've got the hardcover of the first book that I would like to reread, and then I've also got the sequel, and then which is the Million Suns. And so I now have all 3 books that are in this trilogy. It's the 3rd book that doesn't match, which is very irritating because they cover changed it after the 2nd book. So I would like to reread this so that I can then read the 2nd and the 3rd books, but I have them all now. And I'm glad that I have it in hardcover actually, but I did actually really enjoy this book the first time around, so it would be interesting to give it a read again. So there you have it guys. This video is going to be huge because it contains all of my books that I would like to get read with my standalones and with my series. So it's gonna be a big video, but I hope you guys are ready for it. I know you guys like to see these videos, so you might enjoy it. It's gonna be fun for me to edit. But that's it from me guys. Thank you very much for watching my video as always. Again, I apologise for having to film the second half on my phone because my camera died, but I need to finish this video because I've got to go off to work soon. So give me a thumbs up if you have enjoyed it, and if you are new to my channel, if you'd like to see more of these sort of videos, then please feel free to click on the subscribe button down below. If I've done any video reviews of these books mentioned because they are rereads, I will link them all down below in the description so you get to see my first thoughts on these books, and also I get to like check out my first thoughts as well, sort of thing. And maybe I'll do like a second time round feeling sort of video on the reread, so like maybe like 1 month I'll focus on rereading books sort of thing. Who knows, who knows, we'll see, we'll see. So that's it from me. Keep smiling, keep reading and be happy, and I'll see all of you wonderful awesome people in my next video. Bye.